In this summary of the Diary of a CEO podcast, Dr. Daniel Lieberman, a professor at Harvard University and renowned evolutionary biologist, discusses his studies and findings on the links between exercise, aging, and overall human health. Stephen Bartlett, the host, converses with Dr. Lieberman about the role of physical activity in our lives, highlighting that we evolved to be physically active. Drawing from his research and experiences, Dr. Lieberman mentions that one critical aspect of his work entails investigating native tribes worldwide to understand how humans are ideally meant to live. As the two delve deeper into the topic, Dr. Lieberman cites his realization that exercise, as we know it today, is not an inherently human activity. It's a concept that's been born out of our comfortable modern life, where our survival doesn't depend on physical exertion. The revelation came when he was studying the Tarahumara people in Mexico, renowned for their exceptional long-distance running skills. Interestingly, these people don't have a term in their language that directly translates to the word training. This led Dr. Lieberman to grasp that if your livelihood mandates a great deal of physical work, like farming or hunting-gathering, the idea of choosing to expend energy in the form of exercise can seem nonsensical. Challenging conventional wisdom, Dr. Lieberman talks about the myth that we require 8 hours of sleep each night. He illustrates that, contrary to popular belief, people who live without gadgets or electricity, elements that supposedly disrupted our sleep, average 6 to 7 hours of sleep a night. In fact, data shows that 7 hours is the optimal amount of sleep, with people who sleep for this duration experiencing better health outcomes than those who sleep for 8 hours. Diving into the realm of exercises, Dr. Lieberman notes that resistance training has become increasingly significant for him as he's aged. He shares that the loss of muscle mass, or sarcopenia, that occurs with aging can be highly debilitating. The ensuing weakness can lead to reduced physical activity, contributing to a vicious cycle of muscle wastage and frailty. By incorporating strength training into his routine, he actively wards off these factors. Addressing the benefits of physical activity in slowing senescence, Dr. Lieberman reflects that the term retirement, as we understand it today, is a relatively modern Western concept, which can have severe health repercussions. In juxtaposition to this, our ancestors remained physically active well into their old age, often providing for their kin. The regular physical activity would kickstart a suite of physiological processes, from cellular repair and maintenance to preventing DNA mutations and Alzheimer's disease, effectively combating the aging process. Dr. Lieberman's insights throughout the podcast upend many stereotypes about exercise, sleep, and aging as he makes the compelling case that to maintain health, to borrow his phrasing, we must use it or lose it. The host Stephen Bartlett and guest Dr. Daniel Lieberman dive deep into discussing the health implications of aging, exercise, and modern lifestyles on physical and mental well-being. An interesting point to note during their discussion is the observation of a seemingly accelerated decline among individuals after retirement or the loss of a loved one. Dr. Lieberman suggests that depression can play a significant role in such cases due to elevated cortisol levels and a weakened immune system caused by grief. Additionally, these circumstances often lead to a decrease in physical activity, hence contributing to an array of health problems. Dr. Lieberman emphasizes that physical exercise is vital not just for maintaining physical health, but also for mental well-being, considering many instances of anxiety and depression are linked to physical inactivity. He challenges the modern notion of retirement, stipulating it as a Western concept that inevitably comes with a health toll. Historically, humans have continued to engage in physically demanding tasks until their later stages of life, thus keeping their bodies and minds active. Interestingly, a study by Ralph Paffenbarger revealed that the impact of physical activity on health outcomes became more significant as individuals aged. For instance, alumni who exercised regularly had 50% lower death rates when they reached their 60s and 70s than their sedentary counterparts, thus strengthening the thesis that exercise assumes greater importance in maintaining health as one ages. Dr. Lieberman primarily blames environmental factors instead of genetic predisposition for many health problems people face today. He recognizes the role of genetics but insists that environment, over which we have control, plays a far more significant part. He mentions that although exercise isn't a magic bullet for preventing diseases, it does substantially reduce the risk of many health conditions like heart disease, diabetes, and Alzheimer's, and affirms that there's abundant data proving these correlations. Lastly, predicting a looming comfort crisis, Dr. Lieberman speaks about our preference for comfort and ease, often favoring short-term benefits over long-term costs. He opposes the notion that comfort is inherently better, questioning if everyday conveniences like shoes, chairs, and elevators are genuinely better than their more natural yet uncomfortable alternatives like going barefoot, squatting, or taking the stairs. This preference for comfort has led to a world where one must actively choose physical exertion over convenience, which can be challenging, especially if one is unfit, hence making exercise feel more like a chore than a choice, he contends. In this podcast segment, Dr. Daniel E. Lieberman and Stephen Bartlett delve into the fascinating concept of inflammation in our bodies and how physical activity plays a crucial role in keeping it in check. Lieberman vividly describes insulin as the entity that signals cells to store energy upon food intake and decreases during exercise when we use energy. The accumulation of excessive energy, specifically as fat in cells, causes these cells to swell and eventually rupture, triggering inflammation as part of the immune response. Pro-inflammatory foods like those loaded with sugar and trans fats escalate this inflammation process. This is where exercise comes in. When physical activity stimulates muscle cells, they produce a molecule called interleukin-6, which at high levels reduces inflammation, making exercise an effective inflammatory response regulator. This adds another layer to the already well-understood health benefits of regular physical activity. The modern world's sugar imbalances this equation, triggering inflammation, especially when joined with a sedentary lifestyle, which is the norm in today's society. Lieberman recounts how hunter-gatherers, although they indulge in vast amounts of honey, didn't face this problem due to their constant physical activity. Lieberman emphasizes it's not about living like a hunter-gatherer or clocking in hours at the gym. What matters more is incorporating any form of physical activity into our lives. He argues that nudges towards healthier food and encouraging physical activity can make significant shifts. Institutionally, he suggests taxing unhealthy food more and promoting healthier options. One unique corporate example from Sweden is the Bjorn Borg company, which has compulsory exercising every week for its employees. While initially met with resistance, the program eventually led to positive responses. Lieberman suggests incorporating such practices into educational institutions to cultivate the habit of exercising early on. Lastly, Lieberman highlights that the healthcare system could benefit from a preventive care approach rather than focusing solely on treating the ill. Incorporating more preventive healthcare, nutrition, and exercise into medical education could significantly improve overall societal health. In the middle section of this riveting conversation, Stephen Bartlett and Dr. Daniel E. Lieberman unearth some misconceptions and enlightening facts around humankind's innate physical behaviors and abilities. Their chat begins on the topic of long-distance running, a practice widespread among Native American tribes, which used to have a spiritual aspect. Lieberman mentions the universal tradition of endurance running in every human population, revealing it's deep-rooted in our ancestors' lifestyle. Switching gears, Bartlett talks about his recent visit to a podiatrist due to plantar fasciitis, foot inflammation, which led to a discussion about mismatch diseases. Lieberman defines these as diseases born from the incompatibility of our bodies to the modern environment. He cites weak foot muscles, exacerbated by wearing comfortable, stiff-soled shoes, as a cause for Bartlett's ailment. The solution is to strengthen foot muscles to prevent such issues. Lieberman suggests wearing less rigid shoes and engaging in foot-strengthening exercises for prevention, but he cautions one must transition gradually to avoid re-inflaming the condition. Strengthening foot muscles, Lieberman states, is a prime example of choosing discomfort for long-term health benefits, a sentiment that applies to diet, exercise, and sedentary lifestyle as well. The choice of comfort, although tempting, can lead to future problems like Bartlett's foot condition. Next, they venture into the physiology of our hunter-gatherer ancestors. Lieberman explains that bulky muscles deemed attractive in today's society were not a survival asset for our ancestors. Instead, a body more resembling a marathon runner or football player, built for endurance rather than bulk, would have been advantageous. The conversation then shifts to the common belief concerning running and its impact on knee health. Contrary to prevalent thinking, Lieberman insists that running does not cause knee arthritis. He mentions that while knee injuries are common as running injuries, arthritis due to running is a false assumption. Physical activity actually promotes healing mechanisms in the body that benefits joint health. He adds the disclaimer, however, that individuals already suffering from arthritis may find running incredibly painful. Lieberman ends by talking about barefoot running, which essentially used to be the norm before the invention of shoes. With barefoot running, people often land more gently on the ball of the foot than the heel, therefore reducing impact. However, this method can lead to different complications, such as problems in the Achilles tendon, calves, and ankle if not transitioned into gradually and practiced correctly. In this portion, the conversation between Stephen Bartlett and Dr. Daniel E. Lieberman delves deeper into the mechanics of running and the general approach to physical fitness. Lieberman provides tips on how to run in a better, healthier manner. He espouses a barefoot style, irrespective of the type of shoes one wears. This majorly involves avoiding overstriding or landing with your foot too far in front of your body, which he sees as the most harmful aspect of running. By landing with the shank, tibia, in a vertical position, the leg acts effectively as a spring, reducing braking force, which in turn means reduced potential for knee injuries. The conversation moves on to discuss different forms of cardiovascular exercise. Bartlett reveals that he engages in high-intensity interval training, high-T workouts, while Lieberman emphasizes the importance of mixing exercise types. No one exercise is optimal. Combining cardio with strength training is the most beneficial. Addressing Bartlett's curiosity about the link between physical activity and fat loss, Lieberman lays out a nuanced perspective. He acknowledges that physical activity on moderate intensity, like walking 20 minutes a day, is unlikely to cause substantial weight loss. However, higher amounts, circa 300 minutes per week, can indeed contribute to losing weight, albeit slowly and not in large quantities. He cites a study involving Boston policemen, where those who added exercise alongside their dieting regimen lost more weight and managed to keep it off longer than those who only dieted. Despite these insights, Lieberman highlights that physical activity is not the sole factor determining weight loss or gain. It often tightly intertwines with diet and mental state and can be a marker of privilege, as individuals with financial means can afford healthier diets and better fitness equipment. Accentuating compassion, he urges us to understand that personal fitness regimens should not be approached from a place of shame or guilt, but instead viewed as a journey of personal growth. Interestingly, Lieberman also addresses the issue of dopamine hits. He notes that regular exercisers often get this rewarding surge of the hormone, which encourages repetition of the action. However, this positive reaction isn't immediate for everyone. Some new exercisers may not experience an immediate dopamine hit from physical activity until they've formed the fitness habit. Bartlett's subsequent revelation about his fitness journey aligns with Lieberman's insights. Bartlett shares that although he constantly planned to embrace regular exercise, it wasn't until recently that he managed to establish consistent workouts. The struggle to become fit is real, and he agrees with Lieberman's notion of replacing judgment with empathy to support those on their fitness journey. In the concluding part of the podcast, Dr. Daniel E. Lieberman further elaborates on his beliefs about exercising. He strongly endorses the social aspect of exercise, viewing it as the main rewarding element that encourages people to continue with their fitness routines. Lieberman provides several examples of how social dynamics influence exercising behavior, from group jogging to a commitment contract with a company where accountability becomes a tangible and potent catalyst to maintain a regular exercise regimen. Lieberman recounts the anecdote of a friend who was struggling to maintain her exercise regime. To involve accountability, she signed up with a company that holds a significant monetary amount from her. If, according to her chosen referee, her husband, she fails to meet her exercise targets, a portion of her money is donated to a cause she strongly dislikes. This interesting setup led her to consistently meet her fitness goals and avoid funding the disagreeable cause. Stephen Bartlett shares his own technique for motivating himself too. He uses personalized visual cues, like a mood board on his iPhone's home screen, as regular reminders of his inspiration and aspirations. Transitioning from the discussion about exercise, Stephen introduces a podcast tradition where the guest is asked a question left by the previous guest, which in this case was about identifying a life aspect causing discomfort and how to change it. Lieberman admits that his habit of comparing himself with others was a major source of discomfort for him. He acknowledges that these comparisons often resulted in robbing him of happiness, and shared that he works hard to break free from this habit. Evaluating their discussion, Bartlett and Lieberman express mutual appreciation for their respective work areas. Bartlett admits that he assumed he knew a lot about exercise, but Lieberman's insights opened up a new perspective for him, particularly in the context of comparing modern life with our hunter-gatherer ancestors and the disconnect it revealed. Lieberman admires Bartlett for the job he's doing. Wrapping up, Stephen plugs Airbnb, one of the sponsors for his podcast, and shares a bit about his experiences of using the platform both as a traveller and a host. He encourages his listeners to check out the potential income they might earn from their homes if they decided to host on Airbnb. The podcast ends on this note. Check out the full podcast by clicking the link in the description below. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more content like this. Thank you for listening to this podcast summary episode of The Pod Slice.